She's a Jezebel, St. Andrew Jezebel. This is the St. Andrews Jezebel podcast. If this is your first time listening, my name is Ashley. I'm a third-generation Panama City native. I play music, I'm a Floriopolis volunteer, and I also grew up in St. Andrews. We're just coming back from our holiday break, and that was very refreshing. I needed that. I missed podcasting, and I am so glad to be back. Especially so because this is our 100th episode. Oh my gosh, y'all. I can hardly believe I've made it to 100. Those who know me will know that I will always say that consistency is key. And in the beginning, it was really hard to keep that consistency, but I love this medium so much that I decided to stick with it. And I've had a wonderful time interviewing so many amazing locals, and I can't wait to continue to do more. This interview is particularly special because it features Mr. Cliff Munson. Mr. Cliff is in his 90s, and he's lived in historic St. Andrews most of his life. He's had a fascinating, long life. He was in the Navy, he plays the fiddle, and he is full of stories. And on the show, we talk about what St. Andrews was like during the 1940s, his journey as a musician, and the environmental state of St. Andrews Bay. I'm really proud of this interview. It's one of my most favorite ever in all of the ones that I've done. Thank you so much to his daughter, Linda Coram, for helping out with this, as well as his wife, Margaret. Thank you, Mr. Cliff, for being such a great neighbor and friend. Before we get to the interview, I'd just like to say thank you all for supporting the show. Thank you for your kind reviews and the messages that I've been getting since the show has been on break. To keep the show going, I am open for support, needless to say. So if you'd like to sponsor an episode, just send me a DM or you can email me at ashley.feller@gmail.com. And another way to support the podcast is to leave a positive review on either Apple Podcast or Spotify. This really helps the show get discovered, and it's also social proof that the show is making an impression on the community. So thank you to everyone, especially Alan Simmons, for that very kind review you left recently. It really means a lot. Well, let's get to the interview with Mr. Cliff. It's a good one. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Today we are here with Mr. Cliff Munson. Thank you so much for being here today. For those of y'all just joining the show, Mr. Cliff Munson has been a long Bay County resident, and he's one of my favorite musicians in the area. So, Mr. Cliff, what was it like growing up here in Bay County?
Oh, it was wonderful. The town has changed so much. Back in the 30s, we had a pier, wooden pier, instead of the place what they got down now. And we could walk out on that pier in the mornings, and I'd probably be about 10 to 15 feet deep on the end. And the water was so clear, you could look down at the bottom and see big blue-shelled crabs, scallops, and horseshoe crabs, and all kind of sea life down there, you know. But you can't see it anymore because the water's polluted. The water is polluted.
And this is the St. Andrews Bay, right?
St. Andrews Bay, right, yes. It was much cleaner back in those days.
And was the boardwalk still in place during this time? I remember there used to be a boardwalk that went from...
Yes, there was. From the bridge at Lake Huntington, there was a boardwalk all the way down to St. Andrews, you know. And on each side of Beck Avenue, there where the Mexican restaurant is, that was right down below that was marsh. And across the street where the parking lot, where they parked the cars, that was all marsh right in there. So they filled all that in.
Oh, wow.
And there was a boardwalk on each side of the street there.
That's amazing. And you were telling me earlier that in May, you would walk through the woods to go to school?
Oh, yes. Where I live right now, there was no houses there. And we used to walk in the summer, used to walk through there barefooted going to school, or the St. Andrews Grammar School, you know. And it was okay to go barefooted. People did that.
And where was St. Andrews Grammar School at that time?
It's right where the red brick schoolhouse on 15th and Beck Avenue.
So right where it sits today.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely, yeah. And by the way, Merritt Brown was principal at that time.
I did not know that. I went to Merritt Brown Middle School, so I'm definitely familiar with Merritt Brown.
Yeah, he's an old-timer. And I can remember some of the teachers with Bessie Post. No, that Richard Post's mother was a second-grade teacher. And the other lady was Bessie, can't think of her last name. but she carried a ruler around her in her hand, and you didn't want to mess with Miss Bessie because the kids would start actually crack them on the knuckles with her ruler. Say,
Don't mess with Miss Bessie.
that's right.
I was reading in the St. Andrews Bay News. You can pull those off of FloridaHiddenTreasures.com. And that was a happening little school. They had pageants and plays every year and teachers teaching several grades.
That's right. Absolutely. And during that time, I fished with Uncle Ernie.
Wow.
And the restaurant's named after him, but he knew nothing about that. His house was on Louise Avenue in St. Andrews. And after he passed away, his son gave the house up to some relatives of theirs, and they moved the old wooden frame house down to where it's at now and started adding on to it until you see what it is now. But I was in the room that night that he passed away, and Willie McNeil, me and Willie McNeil and an old doctor that he would do house calls. The three of us in there when Uncle Ernie died in this old place on Louise Avenue.
Wow. And what a legacy.
Yeah. And I fished with him as long as with my other brothers, we fished with him. It was a mullet boat, We'd go out and they could use nets at that time about 150 to 200 feet long, You can't use them anymore. But we fished with Uncle Ernie and a couple more commercial fishermen, Because at that time there's not much industry here in Bay County. The Navy base was not there. Tyndall Field was not there. They may have just been starting the paper mill. But other than fishing and just local stores and things like that, there was no industry here at that time.
When would you say that St. Andrews moved in the direction of trying to be more of a destination?
Ooh. I couldn't say when. See, I retired from the service and we were gone quite a bit of time, but it probably about, I'd say maybe in the between 50s and 60s, something like that.
Did you ever get to meet Clark Gable when he was hanging around here?
Never did. Talked to some people that did meet him. Maddie's Tavern was right on Beck Avenue. And I knew some of the ladies that were waitresses there. And they say when Clark Gable came in, the waitresses were all peeping around the corner at him to get a look at him, But he was quite a character.
I've heard some stories from, you probably know Ellen, who had the coffee house for years, and she does the tours at Printing Museum. She's a wealth of knowledge, too. Absolutely. I heard they also had a casino in St. Andrews.
It was not a casino. It was off on where Oaks Cottages used to be. It was a skating rink, a dance hall, and it was not a casino like you see in Biloxi or anything like that. But that was in the 20s.
That's good to know, because when you read the newspaper, it says casino, and I guess I just got the wrong idea.
They had all kind of entertainment there, but as far as I know, there was no gambling casinos there,
Right.
But it was parties and skating rinks and dance halls and things like that.
When did the fiddle come in? When did you start playing the fiddle?
And this is a man I want to meet, that guy with the canoe, with the shop where the canoes are. My dad borrowed a fiddle from his granddad. And he brought it home, and my dad never did learn to play anything on it. But while he had it, I picked it up and learned to play Mary Had a Little Lamb and things like that, And then when he carried the fiddle back to the man that owned it, he bought me a fiddle from Sears and Roebuck, cost $7.50. And he shipped it to me in a pasteboard carton. So I just picked it up and started to learn to play a little bit of that way. I also worked with Miss West. I know you've heard about her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And she was a fine lady. She tried to help young guys make something out of themselves, teach them a trade. And even after I went in the service, I followed the printing business for about 10 years after that, But she was a fine lady. And you ever heard any stories about her?
I've heard two stories. I've heard that she was the first woman registered voter in Bay County. And I've also heard that she was an interesting driver. Is that true?
Oh, yes. Can I tell you one?
Absolutely. I'd love that.
Well, she had, at that time, whenever I worked with her, she owned a little blue Willis coupe, a little small car. And she would take her part of the road out of the middle, down like that. And and most people knew that car. They could see that blue car coming, and they tried to get off the road, But she bumped into a guy on Beck Avenue one time, and he jumped out of his car and says, "I'm sorry, Miss West, I hit you." She says, "No, I hit you. It was my fault." He said, "No, ma'am, it was my fault." He says, "I saw you coming 2 blocks down the street, and I had plenty of time to duck down an alley." And another story, she was out at when the highway patrol station was out at near the bridge, Hathaway Bridge. She was out there, and she got in her car to back out. And when she backed out, she almost hit a trooper that was trying to pass her on the driveway, And he had to go in the ditch. She jumped out of her car and she said, "Sonny boy, you need to learn how to drive."
She sounds like she was a character.
She was a character, but she was a fine lady.
Absolutely. When you were growing up playing music, how did you go about learning the fiddle tunes? Did you have people that you knew that also played music?
Yeah. We played little groups together, and we played that way and just kind of learned by the trial and error, But the more TV come along and the more you see these professionals, you kind of learn something from watching them, And it's just a love of life that we've always had.
Absolutely. And who were you watching on TV that inspired you to play?
Several guys, but the one you just mentioned a few minutes ago,
Michael Cleveland?
Michael Cleveland and the other guy, I can't think of his name now.
Vassar Clements.
Vassar Clements. He was a top dog.
Oh, Vassar Clements was amazing. He was from Kissimmee.
Yes.
Yes. Very, very amazing fiddle player. Him and his cousin, Carol, used to go to the festivals, and I got to know both of them a little bit.
I heard a story that I don't know if it's true or not, that how Vassar Clements got up to be on the big time, that some artist up in the other northern states was looking for a fiddle player from Florida. He heard there was one down there. So they called an operator in Jacksonville and told him what we was looking for. It was a fiddle player that lived in Florida. And she says, well, the one that they were wanting was that she didn't know about, but she says, "I know one that does play the fiddle, Vassar Clements." So they contacted him, and that's where he got on the big time fiddling up there. But they were actually looking for another guy,
Well, they were lucky to get Vassar then.
Was. Absolutely.
Absolutely. He was like the Miles Davis of the fiddle.
Oh boy, let me tell you. Yes.
Did you ever go up to that Bluegrass Festival in Chipley way back when?
Oh my goodness, we played there several times, yeah. What was that judge's name? Judge Wells. Yeah, we played there many times. And he had some famous entertainers come through there. But it was a small campground, and we would go and camp overnight, over the weekend. And me and my wife, we'd go up and camp, and about 1 or 2 o'clock, I'd get tired of playing out in the campground. I'd go to the trailer and get in bed. I still hear those banjos ringing out there, and fiddling out there, and I'd get up and put on my clothes and get back out there again.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, just can't stand it.
That was one of my very first bluegrass festivals my father ever started taking me to. I was just literally a child there, so there's a good chance we ran into each other there back then. And, folks told me they used to have bigger names, like Earl Scruggs played up there before, possibly.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. They had big time. I think that's one reason they had closed down, because they did a small campground. They couldn't have enough people in there to pay, to take up enough money to pay for the entertainment,
Right. I remember it wasn't a very big place, but it sure was a lot of fun.
It was a nice little campground. Yeah. And one couple of guys that I played up there with, you ever heard of Neil McCormick?
I don't think so.
Neil McCormick and his Hawaiian Troubadours? You never heard that?
I don't think so.
Okay, Neil McCormick was Indian. His family come from Indian background, And in the 40s, the Indians were not supposed to be in bars because it was against the law for you to serve them liquor. So he changed his name since he couldn't be in there legally, he changed his name to Hawaiian. He had Neil McCormick and his Hawaiian Troubadours.
Oh, I love that.
And Neil and his brother Earl, I played with them up there in that campground, And they're both dead now. They were interesting people. You could hear them going across the bay. They would play on party boats going across the bay, You could hear their music out on the bay, at night. we played.
That's amazing.
Neil McCormick.
Neil McCormick. I'm going to have to look that up. That is really amazing. And
add the Hawaiian Troubadours.
And the Hawaiian Troubadours.
Yeah.
I'll remember that.
See what you get there.
And we were talking on the phone the other day, and you mentioned something about you've played at the Ocean Opry. What was that like?
Well, we played several times as a warm-up band for different groups, for Bill Monroe and a couple more. I can't think of what they were. But Bill Monroe, when he was there, I looked at his fiddle player, which he was a top fiddle player. And I said, what kind of strings do you use on your fiddles? And he told me what it was. I said, well, if I use those kind of strings, will I sound like you? He says, if you put your fingers where I do.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we enjoyed that. And Joe played with you. You remember Joe Atwood?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Played with him. We had a band going at one time. And played out off the most place out on the beach there. They had a big buffet on there, and we would, something like that.
Okay, big boat that had parties. Awesome.
Yeah. We played on there several times. But Joe was a fine guy. I really enjoyed playing with him. Joe
was a good one, and he is very sorely missed. He was a great friend of mine and big influence on me. I did my senior high school project on the history of bluegrass, and he and Jeb Stewart were both my mentors for that project.
Did Jeb Stewart pass away?
He did.
Oh,
I heard that. Them are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've definitely had a bluegrass community that has dwindled in recent years, but I feel at times it was pretty hopping.
Oh, yeah. Well, it comes and goes.
It does.
It fades out for a while, and then all of a sudden it start picking up and become more popular, But they have had some really fine bluegrass festivals here, like the one at Chipley, and that on the one that when you take that going up 231 and you go 167 or something like that at Mira, there was a bluegrass festival back in there too. You had some good times there. But,
there's been so many good ones around here. I used to go up to Max Tillman's. I think that's in Cochran, Georgia.
Yeah. I knew Max.
Yeah. I really hope that we get more young people involved, because I think that's what it's gonna take to keep it going.
Yeah, I think so too. I really do. But we enjoy it whenever we find one that's available. We go to it and enjoy it,
And we're grateful to have you. And now you play with the Good for Nothing Band, is that right?
Good for Nothing Band, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, we're some people call us the Can't Remember Nothing Band because we get lost over that. But we just I play with Earl Newton and M.L. Richardson and Barbara Terrace. Do you know Barbara Terrace?
I don't think so.
She lives in Fort St. Joe Beach, and she travels all that distance to practice with us and to play, and she plays also out on the beach at Whiskey's, plays the bass. She's a fine little bass player.
I want to hear y'all. Where are y'all playing again?
We just play in nursing homes and church functions. And we wouldn't play like that.
At Sims
Nursing Home.
Oh, yeah. That's a great place. And I'm sure.
Oh, we have good crowds out there.
Being a veteran yourself, they really appreciate you there.
Yeah.
Is there something that St. Andrews used to have that you wish would come back?
Clean water, yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I keep telling we spend a lot of time on the marina, just going down there and parking and enjoying the sunsets and talking to people down there, And I've told so many people about how polluted this bay is. It's totally different from what it used to be. Because the water was so clear back in those days. You could see about 10, 12, 15 feet, you could see right on down to the bottom.
I can remember being a child. You'd have to be a child to do this, jumping off the Lake Huntington Bridge.
Oh, yes.
And you can't see down there.
No,
Who knows what? And we were kids, so we would jump into any body of water.
Yes.
To think that was once clear is just astounding to me.
Yes, it is, absolutely. Those were the good days. And that was a playground for most kids of our age at that time, And you're always jumping off that bridge or diving off of it or just hanging around the bridge, That was a playground. But where Linda lives there, the water is right up to the road. When we were back in those days, there was about 50 to 75 feet more of beach out there.
Really?
Yes, we used to have marshmallow right in front of our house. We used to have marshmallow roast and winter roast out there in parties out on the beach. About 50 to 75 feet of beach. And now it's right up on the road.
That's amazing. I can't imagine what that must have looked like.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
I bet there are more trees too.
Oh, yeah. And we used to have back in the days of mullet fishing in Uncle Ernie, they used to have net reels all around the bay. Did you ever see those before?
No.
Net reels where the boats could back up to the net reel and wind their nets off onto that reel, and do patchwork on the nets or just let it dry out, but there was several all around this bay. They've since gone. Yeah. And Walt, we didn't have transportation at that time. When you went somewhere, you walked. Very few people had cars. And I walked from St. Andrews, where I lived, down there now. I walked from there to Panama City many times, And then later on, they had a city bus that they would run. I think it cost you a dime to ride the city bus, But at that time, we could get in the movie for 15 cents, and you can't hardly do that anymore. You could take $1 and go to the movie and have popcorn and drinks and everything and not spend over $1. We had the Panama Theater, which is gone, and the Martin Theater, which we used to call the Ritz Theater.
Where was the Panama Theater?
Right there is at the wholesale. There's a parking lot now. If I don't know, Harrison Avenue, but it's used as a parking lot now, but that was the Panama Theater.
I bet that was amazing, and I bet that the Martin, when it was the Ritz, was amazing too.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
So your uncle was a photographer and he worked upstairs?
Yeah, well, he was a photographer all his life. It was kind of a hobby. And Masker, I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I know some Maskers, yeah.
Well, the Alice Masker, yeah, she's my second cousin, and it was her grandfather. He had a photography office up there, and I used to help him as a kid. I used to help him carry his cameras and his equipment in, to the school. He would photograph school graduations and other events in school, and he would have that big camera. Plus, he'd have a big old black blanket over his head. He'd get under that blanket and focus the camera, and things like that. But he used to have him carry his equipment in and out.
I bet that was something else, because there was a whole lot more of photography than there is now.
Well, I think it seems to me, and I don't know if I'm right or whether I just dream this, but they used to use gunpowder as a flash too. They would have a little wood. They'd have a little metal ledge up here that sprinkle some gunpowder, and some way or another they would, when they wanted to flash, you'd set that off, and the gunpowder would light up.
That's
that was
amazing.
The old-fashioned way.
Wow. And where did you attend school apart from elementary or primary school?
I went through the first grade through the 8th grade of this grammar school up here on Beck Avenue.
Oh, wonderful.
And I went 1 year, 9th grade in Bay High. Then we moved away to Malone. My grandfather was a sharecropper. Things were hard back then. And we had to move in together, And we moved to Malone and lived with them for a while. And I went to the 10th grade, but I didn't finish. I dropped out. And I went in the Navy, in 1945. But my grandfather was a sharecropper. Most people were at that time. Things were pretty hard. And if you lived with somebody like that, which we lived with them, everybody had to chip in, and I picked cotton and shook peanuts and stacked peanuts and hard work.
I believe that. My mother's mother, her maiden name was Taylor, and they're old Panama City folks too. Y'all knew Daniel Buteau. Yeah. Her most recent husband.
Oh.
They're both gone now. But her family, they were sharecroppers and oyster people, and absolutely. So I could absolutely believe that. Very, very hard times. I can't imagine just the physical demand to do that work.
Well, at the early 30s, like I say, there was no jobs, and they come out with the WPA. And my dad worked on the WPA for a while, and there was so many people looking for work that they couldn't let you work a whole week. They'd let you work for maybe 3 days, then lay you off and let 3 more people work, or to kind of share their wealth, But I think he probably made 25 cents an hour, something like that. But times were very hard back then.
I believe it.
Yeah. This old bay at that time fed a lot of us. you could always find something in that bay, some fish or crabs or something to eat, And it was kind of like a garden to a guy in the country having a garden. This was our garden right out here, the bay,
It's really a shame that it's so polluted now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we might
Yeah.
still have it the way it was.
It would be nice.
Do you know anything about Old Pass?
I know. I just know that the old pass is out there, and they used to, big ships used to come in through the old pass. Before, I think the new pass was cut in 1928, I believe. But before that, everything come in and out of the old pass,
That's something that I'm trying to learn more about because I've always seen the stickers open Old Pass, and I don't really know what it means.
Yeah. Well, have you been out there?
I've not.
Yeah, it's just way on out quite a bit out, quite a distance out there. But that's the way they used to come in. My dad's brother, he was captain of one of those big ships, In fact, his license states that he could captain any ship of any size on any ocean. And he even had written in pen that he could bring his ship into the harbor from Galveston, Texas, on around to the East Coast without right now they have bar pilots. They have to take a pilot out, and he boards a ship that's going to come in, and they help guide that ship on in through the channels. He must have had good charts or something like that because he could bring his ship into any port. One story, we lived on Fairland Street, and there was a Puerto Rican couple who lived across the street from us. And he was an old man at that time. This was probably back in the 70s. He was an old man at that time. He saw my mailbox with a name on it. He says, Munson, he says, did you have a relative that was captain of a big ship? I said, yes, I did. My uncle, my daddy's brother. He said, whenever I was a teenager, I stowed away on a big ship in New Jersey, and I wanted to see the world. He said, so we got down to about Central America, and they found me. And they took me to the captain, and said he could have put me in jail for stowing away aboard his ship. But he says he gave me soap and water to clean up and clean clothes. And he says he offered me a job aboard ship. I told him I didn't want a job aboard ship, but I want to get back home. So he helped me. When they first went into port, he helped me to give me money or funds to get back home, And this old guy, he said he could have put me in jail, but he got all teary-eyed, and he says he was a good man.
So he had a big heart and helped him.
Yeah. They were all seagoing men. All my family were seagoing people.
So it makes sense that you ended up in the Navy.
Well, that was a fluke.
Well, thank you for your service. At the time of this recording, we've just had Veterans Day.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you being here, and this is going to be a very special episode. We know that the only constant in the whole world is change. You can't stop it. What's something that the present and future community leaders of St. Andrews should consider while they're developing and preserving historic St. Andrews, in your opinion?
Keep the historical part true, as much as possible. The thing we'd like to see around here is not tear down. This town has a habit of tearing down old historical buildings, like the Dixie Sherman Hotel.
Yes.
And we'd like to see them keep all this history alive, So far, they're doing it. We're doing a pretty good job.
I think so, too. I think that the buildings should definitely be preserved and restored and not torn down, because I would have really liked to have seen the Dixie Sherman, and I would have liked to have seen the Cove Hotel, and both were gone before I was even the gleam in my father's eye.
Well, even Maddie's Tavern was a historical place. Of course, it burned. I understand it burned. But Maddie's Tavern, there was a lot of it. If we didn't have it, back in those days, we didn't have McDonald's and Burger King and all this other stuff, You only had a few restaurants that you go to and have a good meal, But Maddie's was one of them.
I've heard amazing stories about that place. Well, Mr. Cliff, I really appreciate y'all being here today on the St. Andrews Jezebel podcast. If you could leave one thing for our younger audience that are aspiring musicians, what would you say to them?
Practice, practice, practice. One guy I knew, he said, to learn a new song, you got to play it over and over and over 100 times. And says after that, you got to practice it. like you haven't already.
That's right. Absolutely. I completely agree. You can't beat repetition. Well,
That's
again,
right.
thank you so much for being here and sharing your wonderful stories and being on our 100th episode. I really appreciate that. And so, folks, if you got loved ones in the Sims Veterans Home, maybe check out their activity schedule to find out when the Good for Nothing
Good for
band is
nothing,
playing.
man. That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Cliff. Well, y'all have a great day. And until next time, keep St. Andrews salty.
Right. Absolutely.
One of the best things about St. Andrews is that you can see live music every day. That's right. There is live music being played somewhere in St. Andrews 7 nights a week. Fortunately, my friend Ken Schaefer creates and publishes a weekly schedule for St. Andrews as well as most of Bay County. Ken's spreadsheet schedule is updated often when there's any changes. Ken also shares individual music events and is walking the walk and talking the talk when it comes to supporting live music. Not only does Ken supply the music schedules, but he attends several music performances a week and takes fantastic photos of the musicians. As a working musician myself, I feel blessed to have Ken and his wife Donna as treasured members of our local musical family. Make sure you like and follow Ken's page, Salty Sounds in St. Andrews, and Oh Boy Music on Facebook, so that you'll always know where all the live music will happen. Thank you so much, Ken, for everything you do. I'd like to wish everyone a happy holiday season. Things are hustling and bustling in St. Andrews. So here is a week of community events happening from December the 15th through the 21st. Let's start off on Thursday. This Thursday, December 15th, there is Blues in the Drews, and I believe the Healers are playing, and they start at 6 p.m. If you're a fan of the blues, come to Little Village from 6 to 9, enjoy some tacos, some great beer, and catch up on your holiday shopping. Now, this is exciting. One of my most favorite holiday movies is, of course, It's a Wonderful Life. I love everything about it. It's one of the best stories ever. This Friday and Saturday at St. Andrews Episcopal, they are doing their version of It's a Wonderful Life as a live studio radio production, complete with sound effects created by the players. That is going to be good. Also on Friday night, if you're out and about, the band I play with, the 4th Street Band, is playing at the Little Village from 6 to 9. We play music by the Eagles. We play music by America. We even cover Jack Johnson and Cake. We've got Matt Law on the bass, Ron Merritt on the mandolin, Kurt McCarthy himself on the guitar, and I'll be playing the flute and the accordion. So stop by. We'd love to see you. If you've been procrastinating to do your holiday shopping, then you need to hit up the historic St. Andrews Saturday Market, and that is in the Oaks by the Bay Park. I believe they start about 9 o'clock in the morning. They've got produce, they've got all kinds of craft vendors, there's food trucks, and of course it's right on beautiful St. Andrews Bay. Don't miss it. And then Saturday evening, you've got comedy at the Library on Beck, and they start at 8 p.m., so go laugh your ass off. And then on Sunday, at the Little Village, Brass Saddle is playing at 1 p.m. Monday, you've got Monday Night Little Fest. This is at the Tap Room, and they start at 6 p.m. They've got a huge variety of beer, and Monday Night Little Fest is special. Monday Night Little Fest is sort of like a weekly showcase of different musicians around town, and it has a different host every week. It's a little different from an open mic in that whoever is playing is predetermined by that host. They invite them to play, so you never really know what you're going to see. There's all different styles. Some of the folks are songwriters, some of them are cover artists. There's something different every week for everybody. So go drink you some beers and visit the fine folks at Tap Room. And thank you, Kirk. And I want to say thank you to Kirk, who is the father of Monday Night Little Fest. And he is one of our upcoming guests this season, so don't miss that one. All right, so Tuesday, if you're still needing to do your shopping, why not just visit St. Andrews? I'm sure all the shops will be open a little later than they normally are for holiday hours, and finish up your last-minute shopping in St. Andrews. On Wednesday, if you're ready to dance, go to the House of Bourbon for line dancing with the Panhandle Stompers at 7 p.m. Also on Wednesday, you've got the Tapped Out Comedy Open Mic at 7:30 with Janet Fortune at the Tap Room. So, comics of all skill levels, you're welcome to participate in this open mic. Show up at 7:30 and sign up with Janet. That's all the community events I've got for this week. Tune in next week for more. I want to say thank you again to Mr. Cliff Munson. You are a wonderful neighbor, and you are such a treasure to Bay County. Thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you so much for the gift that you give the world with your fiddle. I love it. And I'd like to say to everyone who's been supporting the show for the last 2 years, thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot. Podcasting has been a wonderful creative outlet for me, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. We'll be back next week with another Salty Local, so don't miss it. You'll find out later in the week. And if you're interested in sponsoring, that would really help us out. Send me a DM on either Instagram or Facebook. And until next time, keep St. Andrew salty.